people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. 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 That's the bad guy.
De la noche, Stephanie Piñeiro.
That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Ahead of this weekend's junior middleweight title fight, Tim Tszyu promises to expose Bakram Murtazaliev in IBF title clash. I am levels above. Tim Tszyu has vowed to show the IBF junior middleweight champion Bakram Murtazaliev that he is overhyped. Tszyu faces him this weekend for the chance to become a two-time world champion. He's coming off his loss to Sebastian Fundoria, losing a split decision, as the latter became the WBO and WBC junior middleweight champion. It was a controversial fight after Tszyu suffered a cut over his hairline after dominating the earlier portion of the fight.
Yeah, but calling Bakram Murtazaliev overhyped, who's overhyping him? Nobody knows the man.
He keeps saying that, Bakram. He's much avoided. That's nonsense. I've been chasing him for a long time, so that's nonsense. I'm here to take the biggest challenges, the hardest fights, the biggest fights, and create a legacy and make a ton of money. That's what I'm here for. Him, Murtazaliev, on the other side, he's step-aside money this and that. And whatever, man. We're in two different worlds. It's a tough challenge, I guess, but I'm just here to show that I'm levels above. It's quite simple, Tszyu said.
Bakram thinks he's avoided.
I wouldn't call Bakram Murtazaliev an avoided fighter, because to avoid someone, you have to acknowledge that they exist. And most that follow the junior middleweight division, and most fighters in it, they don't actually know that he exists. So if he himself feels he's being avoided, it's likely due to the number of step-aside deals he's been made since becoming the IBF's mandatory challenger.
In 2019?
Not for the reasons that he might think. The real reason that he was made so many step-aside deals over such a long duration of time is because Jermel Charlo wanted to unify the division without interruption.
That's why.
And so, Bakram Murtazaliev is undefeated with a record of 22-0, 16 KOs. 16 of those wins have come by way of knockout. He won the vacant title after knocking out Jack Culcay in his last fight. That was his third stoppage in his last 5 fights. However, Tszyu will be his toughest test. Tim has the better resume, having faced big names like Tony Harrison, Brian Mendoza, Sebastian Fundora,
Terrell Gausha.
Tim has fought more of the somebodies in the junior middleweight division than Bakram Murtazaliev has. Bakram, for the most part, even though he's a champion, he's also an outlier. There is a lot of expectation of Tszyu, given what is at stake. A win sets up a possible rematch with Fundora, who is expected to face Errol Spence Jr. next. The winner could then unify against Tszyu in a mega clash in the US or Australia. But Murtazaliev has said he will not be overwhelmed by this occasion. He has the chance to give Tszyu only the second defeat of his career and earn a lucrative rematch at the very least. He was confident about his chances.
Fighting on the non-televised portions of PBC shows a number of times for a number of years, the audience is not familiar with Bakram Murtazaliev. They don't know this fighter, and it doesn't help that his last fight took place in Germany and wasn't picked up by an American broadcaster.
Thus, not that many people saw him knock out Jack Culcay. Guy can punch.
Best way to describe Bakram?
Looks like Artur Beterbiev on a keto diet.
No, he's no Artur Beterbiev.
But he does have generous physical dimensions for a junior middleweight. He's got height, he's got length, and on some level, he can punch. He does have just about as many knockouts as Tim Tszyu, just not against the same level of competition.
Bakram has 16 knockouts to Tim Tszyu's 17.
You can talk a lot before the fight, but doing it, is a completely different story. I've listened to that since the start of my career. It's not new. They kept saying that. A couple have started respecting. But then you get another one, and again, hype, blah blah blah, more and more. It is what it is, I guess, Murtazaliev added.
It's what Bakram had to say, what Tim had to say. I remember us, seeing each other. We sort of gave each other the nod, knowing that we were gonna get it on one day, you know? None of this friendly talk, give each other hugs, it was just the nod. See you in the ring sometime in the future. That nod.
That time is here, that future is here.
Who you fight matters. Who you fight matters just as much, if not more, as how many knockouts you have. Tim and Bakram may have a similar number of knockouts, but Tim's
silver a better caliber of fighter, better quality of competition. That's important. That gives Tim the edge, even though he's the challenger and not the champion, even though he's coming off a loss.
Bakram is undefeated.
The edge goes to Tim. Tim Tszyu.
The fight.
Bakram's got generous physical dimensions for a junior middleweight. He's got height, he's got length, shows the jab, shows it quite often, shows the straight.
Sets it up.
Very textbook, and he's a busy fighter. He's busy within a round. He tries for a lot of punches, perhaps too many.
Because he can be countered.
It's what I noticed in the Jack Colquet fight. How many punches he was throwing and how many of them he was missing, how many times he was countered in between by Jack Colquet.
Jack, who's in his late 30s, a short, stumpy, stocky fighter,
able to counter Bakram Murtazaliev with some regularity. And Jack doesn't punch as hard as Tim Tszyu.
Just imagine if it were Tim getting in with those punches and not Jack.
Jack's response to Bakram Murtazaliev's combinations, his activity throughout a round, throughout the fight, was to bob and weave, slip and slide, counter in between.
Tim's is going to be a little bit different.
I expect Tim to catch and shoot, catch and counter out of the high guard. As Bakram Murtazaliev tries to open up, catch and counter. Bakram throws a lot of sweeping shots, a lot of sweeping hooks, sweeping right hands. He punches kind of wide
from the outside coming in and on the inside, whereas Tim's punches are straighter.
Perhaps that's why it seems like there's more on them.
More authority.
More power from the outside coming in. On the inside, his bent-on punches, his hooks, his uppercuts, they're tight.
Defensible.
Where Bakram is more likely to be cut in between. The best way to think of Bakram Murtazaliev, if you're not familiar with him, is an aggressive, busy puncher with leaky defense that can be countered.
He has size and he has length.
He's big for 154, but his proactive approach can definitely be turned against him.
Edge goes to Tim.
To interrupt Bakram Murtazaliev, disrupt him as he tries to get something going. Tim's power being the game changer. I like Tim to win. I like Tim to land with more authority than Bakram Murtazaliev is used to. I think this will be the hardest puncher that Bakram Murtazaliev has ever fought.
Right.
Whereas Tim is not in unfamiliar territory with a busy puncher. Takeshi Inoue, Brian Mendoza.
They're busy punchers.
He's seen guys like Bakram Murtazaliev before. This is going to be a fun fight to watch because they're both action fighters. And the edge definitely goes to Tim. I only wonder if Tim is going to knock him out, and if he does, when.
Tim is a heavy-handed guy. He ain't the biggest of junior middleweights, but the guy can punch.
Conservatively, I'm going to go with Tim Tszyu by way of knockout in the later rounds.
Say round 9, 10?
In men's light heavyweight news, a few post-fight comments from the newly crowned undisputed champion Artur Beterbiev, who didn't like the fight, yet he still managed to beat a very brilliant Beterbiev-Bivol. After waiting so long for Artur to say something, Artur then suddenly said too much, reminding us all that the blessing and curse of a man of few words is that their few words carry great meaning. Intoxicated, it seemed, by the high of victory, the Russian light heavyweight's guard was down, his inhibitions had been lowered, and the cards had all week kept close to his chest were now on the table.
I did not good today, he said to start. I wanted more quality. I don't know why. I didn't like this fight, but I'll be better one day. He then added, of course it was a tough fight. Dimitri is a world champion too. He has good skills, better than me, but today Allah chose me. How do you interpret that duality? That even Artur says Dimitri's a more skilled fighter than he is, but he's the one that won.
I interpret it as physicality. the role of physicality that is often overlooked in this postmodern era of boxing, that Artur is quite a specimen. Dmitry, as skilled as he is, he's not the same physical specimen as Artur Beterbiev. That's the duality.
What you apply.
Those are your skills, and what you can endure as well as what you can dish out.
That's the physical part.
Did you feel like you were slowing him down with your power as the fight progressed? He was asked in the ring afterwards. No, said Beterbiev, now 21-0 with 20 KOs, because I was not delivering one punch. When the final bell rang, did you think you did enough to win the fight? Yes, but for me, it's uncomfortable, because usually I'm not waiting for the final bell, but today even, I'm lucky too. Your corner before the 10th round said to you, you need to knock him out. Were you surprised to hear that? They always say that, said Beterbiev, laughing. Did that make you any more aggressive going into those final 2 rounds? More focused, not aggressive. If it was true that corner motivation had made him more focused in the final 2 rounds, it could also be argued that a controversial victory had made Artur Beterbiev more talkative, open, honest. Suddenly, having said nothing all week, here he was saying a lot, perhaps too much. Or maybe what he said in the ring after the fight is open to interpretation. Like a fight, and was, like 3 judges' scorecards, lost in translation.
Did the right man win the fight? It all depends on who you ask.
One of the main talking points being brought up is that Beterbiev-Bivol, in spite of retreating and giving up ground, blocked a good number of Artur Beterbiev's punches as Artur was coming on.
This is what Sergio Moro was talking about when he said that the judges are being deceived by what is ineffective aggression. That if the aggression were effective, the punches would be getting in, but they're not.
And the judges score in this fight as if they are.
Oh.
It's a nuanced conversation when you think about it, because blocking punches should count towards defense. And defense is a part of the scoring criteria, the 4 points you use to score a round.
Defense.
Blocking punches is defense. But what if the guy blocking the punches is getting backed off?
Retreating.
Not responding with punches of his own, but moving away, moving back. He's being pushed back by punches that are being blocked. If that goes on long enough...
Is that still defense?
Or is your offense being neutralized by the other man's offense, and all you can do is hang on, hang tough, try to survive?
It's a nuanced conversation when you think about it.
The way I think about it, the difference between what people like to call running and setting a trap is whether or not you land a punch.
When you see a guy, he's circling away, darting from one end of the ring to the next.
And the next, what separates what people like to call running from setting a trap is whether or not you land a punch or land some punches, because then that makes up for giving up ground.
Moving away.
Movement for the sake of movement, well, that's just running. You're just trying to create distance between you and the other guy because you can't hold your ground, can't hold the center of the ring, and can't get off the ropes.
What offsets that? What justifies it, essentially, is whether or not you land punches. So if you got a guy and he's blocking 3, 4, 5 punches, 6 punches, guy's backing him off, but he's not really responding. He's not letting go of punches of his own.
And it just starts to look like the guy's getting overpowered. Doesn't respond because it's not safe to do so. He doesn't respond and let go of punches of his own because he can't.
Not in that moment.
And I feel like that's a very important element of this fight, that Artur Beterbiev was letting go of a lot of punches and Dmitry was blocking a lot of those punches, but it was for long spells.
We should get awarded for that.
Bivol 2, Bivol 3, Bivol 1. I couldn't even find a draw.
Was one of them 116, 112 to Beterbiev?
116, 112 is... how can you give Dmitry Bivol 4 rounds in that fight? He controlled the fight. Listen, he got buzzed in the fight, he buzzed Artur Beterbiev. And no disrespect to Artur Beterbiev, who is an amazing fighter, and it was an incredible fight to watch. I just feel gutted for the kid, because that's a lifetime of work where he should be walking out of that ring as undisputed world champion.
Made him up by a couple of rounds.
Okay, a fascinating fight though.
It's a great fight. I mean, really good, keenly fought contest, and both of them really give everything they had.
How tough was this fight?
I don't know. At least I'm a neutral in it, to be honest. I mean, I've not got any interest. I did think Bivol just won it.
We're still stuck in this stupid era where judges love the guy who just comes forward, whether he's landing or not. It's not even effective aggression anymore. It's like, oh, you're coming forward, you're winning the fight.
There is a criteria that judges are supposed to use: an effective aggression, clean hard punches, ring generalship. I've been told those are the buzzwords that they use, but we don't know. And we're starting to figure out that they really do favor the fighter that comes forward. But there are some judges out there that favor the aggression of Beterbiev, that visual of him stalking and coming forward, even though a lot of his shots weren't landing on Bivol. If you're a guy that likes, all right, no nonsense, I want my fighters to come forward, I want them to walk through punches, I want them to land those hard shots, then you're going for Beterbiev.
Are we now entering into an era that moves away from the Sugarfoot fighter, where all the judges are expected to score is the defensive prowess of the fighter, the movement and the subtleties, but not what is obvious?
Ring generalship is a blanket, nebulous term.
How do you define ring generalship? The way I define it is the guy who's fighting his fight on his terms.
He's doing what he wants.
And, to a lesser extent, what we're used to seeing. What we're used to seeing him do, that lets us know who's fighting their fight.
I know what people say, that you're only supposed to score the fight you're watching. You're only supposed to score the fight that's in front of you.
I understand that, but if you've seen Artur Beterbiev before, and you've seen Beterbiev-Bivol before, you'll know that that's the hardest that Beterbiev-Bivol had to work, and in many ways it's the hardest that Artur had to work, but I saw more Artur Beterbiev moments in that fight than Beterbiev-Bivol moments. Moments where it looks like any other Artur Beterbiev fight. He's coming on, putting punches together, backing the guy off, he's got him hurt a couple of times.
Right.
Chris Algieri is frustrated that more and more the come-forward fighter is starting to receive favor over the mover, the jabber, the boxer.
Well, he must have missed Hitchens versus Lemos.
Chris Algieri feels that judges these days are too often awarding what is ineffective aggression. That so long as the guy's coming forward, that's the guy they're going to give the round to.
It's not always true, but that's how he feels.
So if this scoring pattern were to keep up, we would further distance ourselves from the Mayweather era and all of the Mayweather wannabes that it spawned.
That's not a bad thing.
If the next generation of fighters are going in there with the understanding that the judges are not going to give you special consideration for the subtleties, that you have to do more than just block, and you have to do more than just move,
more than just pot shot, more than just land a few punches here and there. If the fighters are now going in there with the understanding that they have to do more, we end up with more entertaining fights.
Because what we don't need are more fights like Rigondeaux versus Casemiro, or Teofimo Lopez versus Jermaine Ortiz, Shakur Stevenson versus De Los Santos.
No.
Care what the outcome was, the aesthetic of those fights. We don't need more fights like that in boxing. Those fights and their aesthetic are a bad advertisement for the sport, and they're not going to draw in any new fans. Action!
It's easier to interpret and easier to appreciate, easier to digest.
Easier to sell, because boxing ain't exactly for the wine and cheese crowd. It's for the pieces of shit like you and me. I don't think that's a bad thing, if that's what's happening as it pertains to Beterbiev and Bivol.
It's nuance.
The difference in punches landed between Artur and Dmitry is marginal, so to the naked eye, might be hard to separate them. So the impression that I got was what stuck with me afterwards, that more often than not, it looked like a Beterbiev fight.
More of the rounds looked like Beterbiev rounds.
Without nitpicking over how many punches got in versus how many punches didn't, you're letting him get off 5 and 6 punches at a time. He's barreling towards you, and all you can do is cover up and retreat.
You're letting that happen too often.
Without an adequate response, an eye-catching response, that went on for long spells.
You can't let that happen again.